So why is it so hard for a project management team to thrive in a complex environment? What goes wrong? So project management is defined as the use of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to deliver something of value. So technically speaking, you could say Agile frameworks are project management techniques because the focus is still the same. Within Scrum, we use time boxes to focus the intent, and there is a ruthless focus on value. Using Kanban as a method, there is a flow of value. So it is a tool, it is a technique. What's the difference then, and why is it more capable? The key here is adaptability. And this ties into why things go wrong. The essence is that project management in the traditional format is very predictive. We put a plan in place to predict what is going to happen over a time period, 1, 2, 5, 10 years. Once that plan is in place, we then measure our progress against that plan. Now, depending upon how we measure it, we can get really confused and messed up. Let's say, imagine I'm going to drive from London to Edinburgh. Now, if my primary measure is distance covered, I could get to the very first roundabout, gyratory, circular bit in the road and just drive around it and around it. And at the end of the day, I'll stop and I'll say, right, I've traveled 300 miles today. Awesome. That only leaves me, what, 900 miles to go? Less than that, obviously, because Britain's a bit smaller. But the reality is, I'm not very much closer to where my destination is. And so this is an interesting thing. In Agile, we measure how much further we've got to go as opposed to how far we've come. Why? Because it can move. And we know it can move because it's complex, because we don't know. And so that's the first reason why project management fails. The world is becoming increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So when we put it all together, this VUCA space means that often when we look at our soothsayer's ball at the start of our project, it's all hokum. It's a whole lot of assumptions that could vary greatly. In Australia, we're seeing a constant collapse of builders over the last 3 years because raw material costs soared during COVID. Raw materials doubled, tripled in price, which then wrecked their cash flow, meaning that they're exiting the business because all their plans were in place based on a certain price point for cement and steel and yada, yada, yada. So your raw materials change, boom, you're gone. We see this regularly, this inability to flex or adapt when the world changes breaks projects. How many times have you seen or heard of a project that was cancelled or culled very close to the final endpoint because the world changed and it doesn't make sense to bring it in anymore? The second thing is that ability to adapt or learn while we're doing. Now, I know that there is the opportunity to replan. Yes, there is a whole series of structures. There's, your rebaselining, project feedback meetings, etc. It is very heavyweight, and that ability to flex or adapt isn't as baked in project management as it is in Agile. In Agile, planning is a constant, continuous, evolving exercise. We plan every day, we plan every sprint, we plan every multiple of sprints. And the third thing is about the approach. So once we tie into having this predictive place, very often the way of leading our people becomes very directive. It becomes a tell, not ask. Are you up to doing this? Has task number 44 in work breakdown structure 6 been completed? And so the way it works is you end up with one person, the project manager, or if it's big enough, the program manager, all the data flowing up to them for them to make the decisions, which increases cost of delay, which increases the chance of an error in communication, single person failure. We have a critical point failure. Information flow becomes a problem. In agility, the intent is to flip it round and put the decisions as close to the person, close to the data. Now, when we flip it, that gives people freedom to move. It gives them empowerment, autonomy, mastery, and purpose that Dan Pink talks of. It allows us to use the full capacity of our intellect and our capability. It gives us a joie de vivre about turning up at work. And it allows us to solve the problem in the most expansive way possible. For this to work, we need clear constraints and boundaries, and that's true in both frameworks. So in summary, when things are complex, when they're more fluid, we need to be able to respond quickly. We need to be more adaptive. In those instances, having a less bureaucratic, more people-focused, fluid framework will help us respond more quickly, reducing costs, reducing waste, and really double down on that ruthless delivery of value.